the head coach at Mount Verde down in Florida. And so I got to know him then, stayed close with him. He had a Chicago assistant with him. That was sort of how we got connected up. And, if you'd have told me in 2009 that we'd be sitting on a Zoom talking about careers and what to do with, how to make the next move in your life and how to help and influence other people, we'd have had a good laugh at that, 2009 to 2020. So, but I appreciate Kevin having me on and getting a chance to talk to you guys. So as I go, I thought I'd have a little more time to prepare what I was fully going to say, but then the days and weeks kind of smash all together. But I got my notes here and I'm ready to kind of dive into my career and how I started my career and how I sort of chose the path that I went on. And it's funny to hear me say how I chose it because I didn't really choose anything. It just sort of develops in front of you as you go. And I guess that's the first thing that I'd like for everybody to understand, that you can have your goals and those are great and you should have goals and you should be reaching them. But if you're not reaching your goal in your designated timeline, there's no reason to panic. There's no reason to panic at all because everyone's path comes at a different time. And it's really seeing those opportunities that come to you as you're on your path and realizing them and realizing like, hey, this is an opportunity here for me to potentially grow. Or this is an opportunity here for me to develop a relationship that maybe I can help that person and they can help me. And then things start to organically happen. And you learn your lessons along the way. Don't forget to remember when you failed. If you fail, that's an incredible learning experience. And I have a couple tidbits, if I can remember, of me failing and how I figured out when I was in another opportunity where I could have easily have failed and done the same thing. I didn't repeat the same mistake and I learned from it. So as we go, Kevin, I'm not sure how this will work, but if you guys have a question, just stop me, just, chime right in and say something or ask me to stop and ask a question on something, because that'll really help. At the end, if there's something too I haven't touched on that you want to hear a little bit more about, I'm happy to do that. So, I'll just start from where it sort of began. I grew up in Wisconsin in a really small town, only child. And I love the game of basketball. My mom worked at a newspaper. My dad had multiple sclerosis, and he started out living his dream as a television sports anchor. He was in Wausau, Wisconsin doing it, got his big break in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on Channel 12 doing it, interviewed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar back when he was Lou Alcindor, Hank Aaron, all these incredible athletes. And he came down with MS when he was 32. Before I was born, and had to, he had to retire from that. And what he did as I was young, growing up, watching my dad, who was in a walker, but he could function fine, like talk. He just couldn't run or walk, but he could walk somewhere with a little bit of assistance. But, he was still coaching 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade girls basketball. He coached me all the way up through 8th grade. He made a board game. Most of you are too young to remember the TV show MASH. It was about the Vietnam War and a hospital in the Vietnam War, and it was really famous, really big in the 80s and probably the 80s. He made a board game on that. He wrote a screenplay. Like, he made it happen, and he had every excuse to sit and feel sorry for himself. So, and he wouldn't ever let anybody feel sorry for him. He kept on influencing people. There was a young man who was 15 years older than me. He was in the community in my small town, and he was depressed. He was struggling. And my dad really helped him deal with depression and helped him kind of get out of that shadow. And so my dad was a mentor for people. So I was lucky that I had an example like that. Not everybody does, but hopefully someone in your life serves as an example for you when you're trying to figure that out. So I got some of my roots of the hard work and caring for others sort of from that perspective. I got really lucky. I was a good basketball player. The right recruiters saw me at the right time. I had a 3.2 GPA, and I was able to go to Northwestern University to play Big Ten basketball. And that was probably a really big break for me in my career moving forward. When I was being recruited, and I played AAU basketball in Milwaukee. That was my first real experience with diversity, being the only white guy in a gym in Milwaukee, seeing how someone else who didn't look like me lived, operated, functioned. We shared a common ground and bond in the game of basketball. And that was valuable to me as maybe a seventh grader and an eighth grader doing that. And that really helped me understand that the world just doesn't look like my lily white small town in Wisconsin, right? That there's a bigger world out there. And my father always impressed that upon me. So anyway, I'm lucky enough I get to Northwestern. And then here's, one of my first things that I want to impress upon you guys that was helpful for me is be really cognizant of who you surround yourself with, who you're working with, who you're hanging out with, who the people are that are in your inner circle, because those people can really help push you forward those are going to be your network as you grow, whether it's professional and personal. It's really important. So when I was at Northwestern, I played for two different types of coaches. I played for I played for Ricky Birdsong, who recruited me as coming through high school. I played for Ricky for 2 years, and then I played for Kevin O'Neill for 2 years. Now, I'll probably talk about a few coaches here. There's probably going to be some connections to a few of them. So, this isn't something I wouldn't say to them if I saw them, but Ricky was fantastic about teaching you about life, about other religions, about diversity, about getting to know people from different backgrounds. He was not a very good coach on winning basketball games, but he was great about getting everybody to go towards one common goal and to understand the differences in each other is what make us special. Kevin O'Neill comes in, and it's kind of the opposite, right? It's about, we could guard Michael Redd, who was the leading scorer in the Big Ten. We could shut him down, but we could also drink and swear and party with the best of them, because that was his influence on us at the time too. He was getting a divorce. He just started drinking again. He was an incredible basketball mind, but he was struggling with himself personally at that time. And sometimes that reflected. So I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot of the good things and the bad things, because he did do a great job of coaching. We won more games in my 2 years than we won in my first 2 years at Northwestern. And one of his assistant coaches was Brian Gregory. Brian Gregory is now the head coach at South Florida. I was the associate commissioner for men's basketball in the American when Brian Gregory got the job at South Florida. Brian coached me at Northwestern. So we shared a common bond of understanding what we each went through. And that was in 1998. And now this is 2018 when maybe Brian's coaching. So we're talking 20 years later. I'm 44. Brian's got to be in his 50s. So that means, he was maybe in his 30s and really young in that environment. But I just remember that was the coach I wanted to be like. I wanted to be like Brian Gregory. Because I wanted to be the assistant like Brian Gregory, because when I was having bad days under Kevin O'Neill, he was the guy that would help me out. So he really kind of set the tone for the type of assistant coach I wanted to be. And when I left Northwestern, I knew I wanted to coach college basketball. And here's why. I wanted to prove that Kevin, I'm going to swear on here a little bit. I apologize. But I knew I wanted to prove he could win without being an asshole as a head coach. That's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to prove that you didn't have to have a bad experience Like you could give kids a great experience and be a successful head coach. I just wanted to prove you could do it. So I dove into it. I dove into coaching, and I was a D3 assistant at Concordia University in River Forest for a year. I got lucky and became the head coach at Calumet College of St. Joseph. That was mentioned earlier. At the age of 24, there was no athletic program. They had no basketball players, no student athletes at all. It was an adult learners school with no dorms in Northwest Indiana. I don't know if any of you have grown up in Northwest Indiana or been there, or been to Hammond or been to Gary. It's a hard town. It's everybody who went there worked in the steel mills. A lot of the steel mills stopped running, and you pretty much have high school education, and that was about it. So it was a tough place to work, but I loved it because I was cutting my teeth with my own program and trying to learn how to coach and how to do all these things that I wanted to prove I could do and make all the mistakes I could make at Calumet College. And it was really rewarding. But part of that experience was I wanted to go to the next thing. I needed to be an assistant. I needed to be a Division I assistant. So I was at Calumet College for 4 years. I tried to get the assistant job at Loyola after year number 1 when Larry Farmer was there. Larry was great, didn't hire me. I was doing stuff like sending a fax to Larry Farmer every day. Like Kevin, you remember when you would do stuff, you'd write a letter every day.
Every day.
Well, for some reason, I thought sending the head coach a fax every day about how I would be a great recruiter or something like that was going to be a good idea. But anyway, I'm 24, 25, trying to get this assistant job. And what I'm trying to say is I was halfway in, halfway out in my current job. Along this way of me working at Calumet College of St. Joseph, I met a person by the name of Steve Pratt. Now, some of you may know him. He runs Full Package Athletics out of Chicago. While I was working at Calumet College, I was also an AAU coach at Full Package Athletics and coaching the 17 and under team, the 8th grade team, doing whatever I could do on the weekend to help out. That's what an NAIA coach, you can be whatever you want. You can go coach club ball, you can go do whatever. So Steve was a really big mentor of mine. Like, I loved the way he trained people. I loved the way he thought. He was always pushing your buttons. Steve was fantastic for me. And I was going into my 4th year at Calumet College, and I had just, I turned out, or I couldn't get the job at Loyola. I had a graduate assistant position that was offered to me at Northern State University. I don't know if people know who Don Meyer was, but he was an incredible coach, Hall of Fame coach. He was at Northern State. He offered me a job. I was dating my wife at the time. She didn't want to go to Aberdeen, South Dakota. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to stay in Chicago and try and make this work and just be Calumet College. So I guess that's another lesson for you, is you got to pick and choose as you go through your career where you want to go. But being at Calumet College, I realized I was halfway in and halfway out. And Steve Pratt said to me, how does Mike Hayes think you are as a head coach? And now Mike Hayes was my first recruit at Calumet College in the history of the school. And now he's a senior going into his last year. And Steve made me reflect on what would Mike Hayes' experience be at this moment. Would he say, I was all in, or I was all there for him? What's his experience going to be when he leaves? And and my answer was, I don't know. And that was a wake-up call to me to say, focus in on what's important, dial in, and remember why you're coaching, and make Mike Hayes' experience be the best thing in his life up until that point. And we had a phenomenal year. We didn't win 100 games. We didn't win anything, but we had a great year from a coach, player, experience. I learned a lot. And Mike Hayes and I are still really close to this day. But that was a big wake-up call. And I just encourage, if you're stuck in a rut in coaching, think of that. That was really, really helpful for me. To think about the experience of others under your tutelage, right? So I move on from Calumet College after I say I'm halfway in, halfway out. What ended up happening was I'd finished up my 4th year there. They were in a good recruiting class, but Steve Pratt offered me a job at Full Package Athletics to be the director of basketball. And at the time, he had 32 AAU teams, boys and girls. And I was going to be the director of them. I was going to run camps and clinics at night. I was going to do personal training. I was going to run an AAU program. So I jumped at it. And I jumped at it because I felt this was a way for me to, if I wanted to get into Division I, this might be the better way for me to do it. Because, the hard part is coaches don't always need, head coaches don't always need more head coaches. Sometimes they need people that can help them get talent that they can coach. So I went in and I helped Full Package run a program. Amon Shumpert came out of our program, played at Georgia Tech. And I think a lot of people know him in the NBA, but he came out of our program, and eventually we had a couple kids go to the Ivy League, and a couple kids went to Brown University. And Craig and I knew Craig Robinson when he was the head coach at Brown because he was a previous assistant at Northwestern. So I'd known Craig and helped a couple kids go to Brown. And after maybe 2 years of Full Package, he had an opening. Actually, I think it was right when he got the job, he had the opening. So I jumped myself. When he got the job at Brown, he had an opening. And I was also working for Full Package, but I had just started a full-time job because AAU is kind of part-time. Just started a full-time job at Lake Forest Academy. Kevin, you might know Lake Forest Academy a little bit from your Montverde time. So I was the assistant dean of admission at Lake Forest Academy. I was in charge of growing the beds, and I was also trying to help spearhead the basketball program a little bit more. Like they had a kid from Puerto Rico who was good, and I really wanted to kind of build a powerhouse prep school program, and the athletic director was all about it. I'm on the Lake Forest job for 4 months. Craig gets the job at Brown. He calls me, he wants me to interview. I'm all excited. I go, I interview. I don't get the job. He hires Doug Stewart instead. And Doug played at Brown. So now I'm kind of devastated that I tried to get Loyola. I got an AAU, made some good connections, had a chance at Brown, didn't happen. So now I'm at Lake Forest Academy. And again, I kind of level set and I say, let's dial in, let's make this great, and let's not worry about getting another job. Let's just do this. So I concentrate on starting to grow my network in recruiting, helping out at LFA, and then I also start grad school at Northwestern University for sports administration because I decided, you know what, I'm going to be if Division I basketball is not in my future, I'm going to go be an AD at a high school or a prep school or something like that. And I need my master's to do that. So I'm going to pay my way through grad school part-time. So I started doing that. Now it sort of becomes, as you grow, how big can you grow your network? And then it's connecting dots. I was lucky because I had an acquaintance who knew Luol Deng really well. Luol was playing for the Bulls at the time. Luol came to look at the campus. He connected me up with a guy named Amadou Gallo-Fall. Amadou now is the president of NBA Africa, running the Basketball African League. He was running a school in Senegal called Seeds Academy. Kevin's nodding his head. And so Seeds Academy at Lake Forest at the time is having this entire year dedicated towards learning about Africa. So I convinced our head of school to fly me to Senegal to spend a week at this prep school with their basketball summit that they have every year, which was amazing. And I'm at this summit, and You know, Joe Tuomo's there. He's been all over the place in pros and all over the ranks. I meet Roy Rana, who was coaching at a school in Toronto. He's been the Canadian national team coach for under 18 and under 20. He's now in the NBA. You just start meeting all these amazing people that are now in the NBA. And I was able to recruit 2 kids from Seeds Academy to come to Lake Forest Academy. I was able to go into Poland, England, Australia, and just start growing a network of people. Meanwhile, at Brown, Doug Stewart is calling me, asking me about kids he can recruit in the Chicago area in Lake Forest Academy. Now, this is the guy who took the job that I wanted. And a part of me really wanted to be like, man, I'm not trying to help you, dude. I'm really not. And I remember where I was at the gas station. I'm listening to him talk, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I have a choice right now. I can be an asshole and I can be angry, or I can help this dude out. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to help this guy out. I'm doing all right. I'm choosing my path. I'm fine. I'm happy with where I'm at. So I help them out. They get 2 kids from full package to go to Brown. They have a good year at Brown, 2 years at Brown. Craig gets the Oregon State job. Now he's at Oregon State. Doug Stewart goes with them. Doug Stewart calls Steve to say, hey, we'd really like to bring Nate over to Oregon State. Do you think he'd be a Dobo? Think he'd come over as our Dobo? And Steve goes, he's doing too well at Lake Forest Academy. He's got it rolling. He's not going to be your Dobo. But if you want him to be assistant, he might do it. Doug, this is the guy who I was nice to over the phone, goes back to Craig, says, I think we got to get him as an assistant. Craig calls me the next day, says, we start talking, and he's like, you know, would you be interested in coming out to Oregon State as an assistant? And I say to him, hold on, I got to talk to my wife. So I talked to Heidi, and he goes, good, because if you didn't say you weren't going to talk to your wife, I would question you. So I talked to Heidi, and, you know, I think the big lesson to me was, you know, don't think that first failure is going to be your deciding factor. The fact that I handled my failure from Brown probably in a decent manner made Craig think like, okay, now I can hire Nate. Like now, and plus I was probably more ready because I had built some of these relationships. So go to Oregon State and just had a great 6 years over there. I'll stop if anybody has any questions, or I can keep going because I'm about halfway. So I don't want to stop. I don't want to slow any momentum down. But if anybody's got any thoughts up until this point.
No, Nate, we'd rather you keep going because we got some questions from our moderator, and then we'll open it up at the end. So this is very interesting.
All right, because this is where it gets. I have 2 really good lessons, 3 actually. Well, I can probably keep going on more, but at Oregon State, I loved it, and I skipped a step, man. And I knew it. I completely skipped a step. I went from a small, Connecticut college. I went from a small Calumet College of St. Joseph, NAIA Division II school without a program, to a grassroots AAU program, to a prep school, to a Pac-12 assistant. And I skipped a step. So I knew I had one thing. There are going to be people that were upset I skipped a step. So I'm going to have to deal with that when I talk to people. And then 2, other people that are going to be really interested to learn, man, how'd you do it? Right. And so, and then I'm at Oregon State, and I'm trying to figure out, and I'm going through this process, and I think, man, I can be good at this. Like, I think I can be good at this, because you don't know what Division I's like till you're in it, and you're like, okay, this is like everything else. It's all about relationships. So the first thing I realized at my time at Oregon State was I could do 2 things. I could help a lot of people because I was a high major assistant, and I could help high school coaches. I could help AAU coaches. I could help mid-major assistants, low major assistants. I'm on the road. I'm seeing all these players. I can maybe recruit 2 of them, but I'm in a gym I'm in a gym and there's 6 Division I kids in there. I can probably only recruit 1 of them. But when I go to another gym and I see a couple other guys from mid-major leagues, I'm starting to make friends with them saying, hey, have you seen this kid, and this kid? Have you gone over to check out this school? And I'm sharing information that I have that I don't need for myself, but I know I'm helping out that high school coach. I'm helping out that AAU coach. I'm helping out those college assistants who are just looking for players, and they're starting to grow their relationships. So I really I tried to be a connector. I tried to be a connector in that point, because I felt if I wanted to grow in this business, I needed to create more friends and to help people. And then the other piece was, instead of spending my time trying to talk to Ben Howland or trying to talk to whoever the head coach at Cal was, Mike Montgomery, instead I was talking to other young assistant coaches who were like me, that were on the road, no matter what level they were. Because I knew whoever was on the road right now was somebody that was going to continue to grow with me. And that eventually we're going to get to the point where we're the head coaches or we're the head assistants and we're creating that influence. So I sort of tried to build my army with a lot of guys that were like me. Now, and then the other piece of just trying to help out others. So through the course of my time at Oregon State and being a former AAU coach, I could really relate to the AAU guys, because I think there's coaches out there who would never have really experienced the AAU side of things, and they think every AAU coach is trying to tell them something. They're trying to sell you on a kid that's not as good. But what I knew was, being a former AAU coach, I knew that who could compete at what level, and that if an AAU coach is really telling me something and really passionate about it, then I need to listen to that as a college coach. I need to understand that the guys who are driving around with these kids every single day, helping them, these are the guys that care about where these kids go. And they're not trying to put them in positions that they're going to fail in. Sure, there's a couple times they'll try and say he's a little better than he is, but that's for me to decide. But I really valued the input from the AAU coaches and high school coaches. And I tried to, every time I left the gym, I said, hey, what can I do to help you? Because when you're an assistant coach, you are in a take mode. And you want to avoid that at all costs. You do not want to be a taker, because that's all we do. We walk into a gym, we find the best player, we figure out who the influencer is, and we start trying to work it. And we're just taking. We're not giving anything back. And that stuck with me, that's how I viewed sometimes college coaches when I was an AAU coach or a prep school coach, right? Kevin, like, we're in the gym and you see these guys come in, they say, hey buddy, they haven't talked to me once. Like, you have to grow an authentic relationship where you're helping somebody. You can't help everybody, but I miss that part. Someone asked me earlier, like, I bet you miss the late nights. Like, I definitely don't miss the late nights in coaching, but I miss the relationships with those prep school coaches, the AAU coaches, that you would keep going back to in recruiting, because you trusted them, they trusted you, and you were really growing a relationship with them. I love that piece of it. So that was a big lesson, and I really want to put that influence on you guys too. Like, really trying to identify with those who are in similar situations as you. It doesn't have to be a young coach, could be an older coach, could be somebody who's been a head coach who's now an assistant again. Like, but just keep trying to identify with those people. Another lesson I learned quickly is, when you're working for a boss, don't react like your boss. Your boss is angry about something and he's telling you something, like, go tell that guy, like, here's the situation. We were playing in the CBI tournament, like the CBI tournament, College Basketball Invitational. I love it, but it's not an amazing postseason tournament, but it's a postseason tournament. At Oregon State, who went 0-18, we took over the program, and now we're in the CBI. We actually we won it our first year. But we're in the CBI tournament, and Craig gets a call from Kanan Chapman. I don't know if that name rings a bell, but his son played at Michigan. Kanan's an AAU coach in Portland. He's an influencer in Portland. But he says on Craig's voicemail, "Hey, coach, now that the season's over, I'd really love to get you up to my golf outing." Well, we're in the middle of like the second round of the CBI tournament, right? So Craig's insulted that the local guy doesn't know we're still playing. So he's just kind of angry. So he barks at me, doesn't bark at me. He goes, "Nate, tell Kanan we're in the middle of our tournament. He's got it. I can't do this. Da 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 da." I'm all fired up, right? I got the marching orders. I'm all fired up. I call Kanan. I'm on the phone. I'm kind of hostile. Like, I'm still like kind of fighting for my head coach. And I ruined our relationship. Like, I ruined it. I couldn't get it back. And I realized that I ruined it on the call. And I realized just because my boss was mad doesn't mean that I had to reflect that anger and send that message clearly. I just needed to somehow massage this thing to be like, "Hey, Kane, you know what? We're still playing. If we finish, man, coach will be up there at that golf outing, but I don't think he's going to make it. Do you want tickets to our game?" Like, I just needed to think outside of what he was doing. So a small lesson is, even don't react like your boss. If your boss navigate the situation, that always makes your boss look good. Because what I also did was I screwed Craig's reputation with Kanan also, because I was the messenger. So 4 years later, when his son's playing at Jefferson and I'd love to recruit him, I know there's no hope. I can't even, and even though Kanan and I settled it, it was over. There was no chance. It was over. So that was a really good lesson that I learned at Oregon State early on, that I have taken with me now, to where even when I was at the American and my commissioner would be angry about something, "Nate, tell Coach Dooley, da 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 da, he's got to stop." I'm not going to go on the phone and yell at Coach Dooley about what's happened, but we're going to talk a little bit about, okay, you got to take it easy in the press conference, da 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 da. So it's something everyone's going to run into. You've probably run into it already. I hope you didn't make the same mistake I did. But if you did, you're going to find that opportunity to be in that same situation where you won't repeat that same mistake. But that was one that was seared into my brain. And I think it's because I knew I couldn't recruit that kid after that too. But that was a big learning experience for me from that perspective. So then I go to Oregon State, and I don't try and grow. I'm happy in my role as an assistant coach. I'm doing scheduling, happy being the international recruiter, the Portland recruiter, the Chicago recruiter. That's what I was doing. I tried to get a couple other assistant jobs, but then I was comfortable working for Craig. And I really want you guys to be cautious of that word comfortable, because comfortable meaning not like I don't like my boss, or I'm not home to see my wife enough, or I'm not around my kids. I don't really mean that. I just mean sort of in your own routine, day after day and time after time, and not seeking growth. And I don't think I saw out enough growth. And I'm not quite sure why. I loved Oregon. I loved the state of Oregon. I didn't want to leave it. I still want to go back, to be totally honest. But I wished I would have been a little more outgoing and trying to grow. And that doesn't mean leaving the program, but maybe pushing Craig for me to do more within the program or expand my role somehow. So that rung true. So I want to I got a little bit left here with my story because it's some really key points. But my last year at Oregon State, we had just finished recruiting Gary Payton II to come to Oregon State, which is a wild story in and of itself. Gary Payton Sr. He's a piece of work. He is awesome. But so we're done recruiting point guards, right? So now if you're an assistant coach and you're done recruiting with your class, that means you have an opportunity to help all your friends out there who are still looking for players. So Kamani Young and I are talking, and Kamani Young and I go back. We go way back to the point when I was at Lake Forest Academy. Kamani's now the associate head coach at UConn with Dan Hurley. Back in my first year at Lake Forest Academy, I go to New York City to meet two programs, New Heights and the Boys Club of New York, because we want to try and recruit some New York City kids to come to Lake Forest Academy. I don't know my way around New York at all. I somehow make it to where New Heights is. I barely have any money. Kamani is getting ready to go get lunch. I meet him for the first time. And he's like, "You want to go get lunch with me? I'm going to go down the street to get a sub sandwich." So we go down the street, we get the sub sandwich, we come down. I'm waiting an hour before I talk to this kid at New Heights. Kamani's with me, and we're just talking. I'm learning about him. He's learning about me. We sort of stay connected. Through the years, we're still connected. I end up, when I was in Africa at Seeds Academy, Nick Blatchford, who was running New Heights, went on to Under Armour, and he's doing lots of things. Nick knew Kamani. So then, obviously, so I had that little connection. So now we're at Oregon State. We're watching New Heights. We're able to recruit Devon Collier to Oregon State through the support of New Heights and Nick Blatchford and Kamani Young and all these guys. So anyway, Kamani's now at Minnesota with Richard Pitino. I think he's in year number 1 at Minnesota. We just finished our recruiting class at Oregon State. It's the fall. And Kamani's like, "Nate, we really need a point guard. We need a guard." And I say, "Man, there's this kid, Nate Mason. He plays for a team, an AAU team in Georgia. I saw him at Peach Jam. Justin Young, who's a really good talent evaluator. He runs this thing called Hoop Scene. I love Justin. I trust him. I sat with him at Peach Jam. I watched this kid play. This kid just gets buckets. He has a feel. I really liked him. Like, he's probably not getting recruited at the Big Ten level, but I think he's good." And I was recruiting him at Oregon State, but we signed Gary Payton too, so we're done. Here's his dad's number. I'll call the dad, help you out. Those two hit it off. Nate ends up committing to Minnesota. Kamani and I talk about it all the time. But that's a great example of how you can help other people, how you can help your friends, how you can keep your circle tight, how you can grow your network. I think that's I think it's really, really important as you come through. So anyway, I get complacent at Oregon State. Maybe Craig does too. We get fired. Okay. 6 years, we're fired. It's May. We get fired in May. Everybody else gets fired in April. We got fired in May. And although I don't wish getting fired on anybody, getting fired was really, really good for me. You go straight into hustle mode. But so I'm calling around. I'm let go. I'm trying to get a job. Herb Sendek calls me back. He's at Arizona State. He goes, "Nate, I'm telling you right now, this is the best thing that's ever happened to you." I was on the phone, and I'm like, "You've got to be effing kidding me. No, this isn't how is this the best thing that's ever happened to me? I don't get it." Turns out, and I told him this not too long ago, like, he was right. Like, me being forced out of my comfort zone was the best thing that's happened to me. Because after that, my friends looked out for me. Ben Johnson, who played at Northwestern, he was an incoming freshman as I was leaving. So I helped get him acclimated at Northwestern. And Kamani Young were both at Minnesota. I'm out of a job. It's June. I'm working the Reebok camp at Philadelphia U with my man Matt Penny and those guys that were running that thing. they hired me right when I got fired. 3 days later, they're like, hey, come work our event in July. So I'm working their event. But Kamani and Ben call me and they say, Nate, will you be the Dobo at Minnesota? We need somebody. I know you want to be an assistant, but will you be a Dobo? So I was a little bit nervous about being a Dobo after being an assistant at the Pac-12, but because I had two friends there that I was close with, I took the job, and that job gave me a wider range of experience. I was working with athletic directors. I was working with other sports programs. I was meeting with the AD. I was meeting with the associate AD. I was doing the budget. I was doing the travel. I didn't like it, but it grew my skill set. And I was working with two of my best friends. And working for Richard Pitino was hard in a very good way, that he was pushing me to be my best all the time, on me. But he treated me like an assistant. And I'm thankful for him for that, always. So that Kamani and Ben gave me my next shot, because my 2 years at Minnesota then lined me up for the opportunity at the American Athletic Conference. And this is sort of where I'll leave it. Dan Leibovitz is now the associate commissioner at the Southeastern Conference, the SEC. Dan has been a head coach at Hartford. He's been an assistant coach at Temple. He's a Philly guy. He played at Penn. He was an assistant coach in the NBA. I first met Dan when I was at Calumet College of St. Joseph. My mentor, Steve Pratt, and Mike Dunlap were best friends. They were hanging out the Final Four. I met Mike Dunlap and a couple of his assistants at Metro State and Dan Leibovitz when I was 24, 25 years old. Dan was an assistant at Temple. My girlfriend, who's my wife now, is a Philly girl. I came home. I said, that's it. I've hit the jackpot. I met the assistant coach at Temple. We're going to be in Philly. I know it. I'm going to be coaching at Temple someday, right? So anyway, Dan and I, we stay close. We always see each other in gyms. We stay connected. He loses his job in the NBA. We're texting. He gets his job. He gets the job at the American. I'm texting him. I'm happy for him. We're talking all the time. Then he leaves to the SEC. I'm at Minnesota. The Americans they've gone through a couple interviews with people, and they're not really sure on who they are. So they asked Dan, who do you think would be a good fit at the American? And thank God for Dan, because he says, I think Nate might be interested. Let me talk to him. And that's how it started. I had to go through the interview process. I had to win it, but my connection from a person I met at the age of 25 that I just kept growing that relationship with helps me become the associate commissioner at the American. And then the guy who didn't hire me at Brown hires me a second time to be the associate executive director at the NABC, which I'm extremely thankful for, because those last three opportunities, Minnesota, the American, and now the NABC, provide an opportunity to keep expanding my range. And I think that's the biggest thing that I want to impress on all of you is I read this book, Range, by David Epstein. It's great. And I know I'm repeating it a lot, but ways where you can not be comfortable, where you can expand your range, where you can grow your network, where you can help people, but where you can also understand where you've absolutely failed, and being able to recognize that you failed and learn from those failures. You're going to learn. You're going to learn. You're going to grow. And the biggest pride I have now is just being able to help other people kind of go through that process while I'm still trying to navigate it myself. I'm 44. We all got a long ways to go still in this world. So I think that's where I should leave it. Actually, Kevin, I think that's where I should leave it. But
I agree. And at this point, we're going to turn it over to our moderator, Odell McCants, and then he's going to ask some questions, and we're going to open it wide open.
Thank you, Nate, for taking us through your journey. And it's easy to say everything's about relationships, but you really touched on how you what you invest into those relationships. Thank you very much. From a coaching perspective, something you said very early on is the player experience. And what to you is a great player experience?
You know, that's a good question. How do you find that? I think when you probably don't know until a couple years down the road, maybe. But I think what a way to judge a great player experience is maybe how much they share with you, how much they're able to open up to you, how much you're able to communicate in difficult times and come to a common ground. Players don't always agree with you, right? Like we know that. Like we get that. And where's your relationship during those most trying times? And do they trust you? Doesn't mean they're going to listen to you and do what you say, but do they trust you? That you'll know, man. You'll know in the connection. There were two players at Oregon State, Roberto Nelson and Joe Burton. Roberto Nelson was the Pac-12 leading scorer 2 years in a row. Joe Burton was a really good power forward. He was recruited by another staff member at Oregon State. We were always we couldn't get it lined up. And that's a whole nother episode, is your dynamics on a staff. That's a whole nother episode. But my last year with those guys at Oregon State, I was able to just kind of give up all of my issues I had with them and just level set with myself and said, okay, I'm finishing this year with a great relationship with these two guys. That's how I'm going to finish this year. And that's kind of how I valued my day. Like, was my relationship with Joe good today? Was my relationship with Roberto good today? How did I gain their trust? How did I help them? What did I do? And now we're still texting each other happy birthday. They're still responding to my Instagram. We're still connected. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how I did.
Oh, absolutely. And I think your point about the interview question you had was, what would your player or players say about their experience and about you as a coach was very impactful as well. And I'm sure in developing that definition for you.
I mean, when my mentor said that to me, it struck me to my core, because I knew the answer, but I didn't want to say it. I knew the answer was, he's probably like, Coach Pomeday's all right. And not, Coach Pomeday's my man. Right? So that refocusing changed a lot of things for me.
You mentioned that you felt that you skipped a step. When you look back, what did you think, or what do you think you missed when you referred to skipping a step?
Yeah. So I wasn't a Dobo. I wasn't a video coordinator at a Division I school. I wasn't a Division II assistant. I wasn't a Division I low major assistant. I mean, I went right from prep school to high major. And it was a total reflection of recruiting, was what that was. And credit, I have to give, this is going to sound conceited, I have to give Craig some credit that he saw in me that I could help him be a part of his talent acquisition at Oregon State. He didn't know if I could coach or not, but he was interested in me after he knew I had a lot of these relationships that I developed at Lake Forest Academy and Full Package. And then, so that's what I mean. Like, I think everybody gets to a point where you get lucky and maybe you skipped that step. Well, I think you have to have some awareness that maybe you're going to be viewed that way. And it just sort of helps you read the room and helps you navigate some relationships as you go.
Great. Well, Coach Sutton, we want to open it up.
Yes, absolutely. First question, Trey Bermel.
Coach, thank you. And Nate, thank you so much for sharing your story. Actually, I really enjoyed it because it seems like you have a real understanding of, I guess, like where you were then, where you are now. And it's really real, like it's really authentic, right? And how you told your story. So thank you. One connection we do have that I'm sure you didn't know, I worked with Matt Penny last year with his Under Armour stuff that he has going on.
Yeah.
Awesome dude. I love working with him. He was great.
My man.
One question. So I have a two-part question for you, if you can. Like, I guess, can you talk about your relationship with failure at the beginning of your career versus now, like how you see it, like your emotions towards it, right? And then expand a little bit on seeking growth versus staying comfortable.
Yeah. So that's who you surround yourself with. Because I think it's hard to see yourself without somebody pointing that stuff out for you, who you trust. For me, I was lucky to be around Steve Pratt, who was my mentor. Like my father passed away my senior year in college. So I was really, I was a lost puppy for 4 years in there after that. From the age of 22 to 26, I was still navigating my way of finding myself. And having a mentor who could say, you're slacking. How does Mike Hayes think his experience has been? Nate, you think you put in a hard effort, but did you really look at all the opportunities to succeed here instead of just giving up on the first or second try? So he helped me just ask questions of myself. So I wasn't as afraid of failure when I screwed up, because man, I'm screwed up. Like I've done some things in coaching that have been bad. I've done some things and I've made life choices that I will never make again. I mean, but you have to be able to identify them and learn from them. And they're humbling, but I've dealt with, I deal with anxiety. So I've learned to forgive myself when I've failed, to just kind of take a little bit of that pressure off myself and just say, man, it's now how you respond that's going to define you. So identifying the failure is great. Responding is probably the most important piece to it, right? But that piece has helped me, just understand, look, you're going to fail, but how you respond is the most important piece. Hope that helped, Trey. That's a good question. Trey, where are you now? What are you doing?
I work with AU team here in Richmond, Virginia. I work with Team Loaded, and I'm currently getting a graduate degree in business administration at BC also.
Awesome. I know Team Loaded. Was never able to recruit a kid from there, but I know Team Loaded.
Next question, Kyle Adams, Bigger Than the Ball podcast.
Good evening, Nate. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I was really impacted with just your intention and how you look to serve people through your experiences. That really touched me. One of the questions I had with a lot of what I do with It's Bigger Than the Ball is based around student athlete experience. And I heard you talk about wanting to provide, a great experience for your student athletes. And in your current role as an administrator, how much are you able to impact that and kind of shape how coaches view student athlete experience with what you're doing at the American Conference?
That's an amazing question, because I felt that is a challenge. That is an absolute challenge, right? Because when I was at the American, it was a lot of administrative stuff that involved scheduling, officiating, dealing with coaches' issues on some stuff. And trying to find ways to like give great experiences to student athletes was you had to really dial in or drill down to find some points. And sometimes they were off the court, right? Whether it was some sort of a digital network thing we were doing at the American to highlight student athletes and how they're doing in the community, or talking to the ESPN network because, hey, these two, this kid has a special story. I want you to try and highlight it. So it's a lot of it at the American was trying to message out, give the kids a platform to tell their story a little bit to the people who are watching the games. The other impact is, gosh, how do I say it? As coaches, I think we all sort of understand like look, coaches are people. There's selfish coaches out there. There's selfish coaches who are more for themselves than they are for the kids. And trying to cultivate coaches at a young age to be about, if you're making the experience about the kids, this is going to benefit you. I mean, Coach Calipari says it all the time, right? Do what's best for the kids. And people think it's a marketing thing for him. But in reality, like it is what kind of gives him his juice a little bit too. Is now he's got 5-star kids, so they're going to be fine no matter what, right? We're trying to help the Division III, the Division II, the kid who's going to go get a job after this, right? Now at the NABC, I still think it's that. I think it's really trying to get coaches to understand their student athletes are much more than just guys who are X's and O's to score baskets. Like these guys are dealing with mental health issues, physical issues. They got to be ready for the workforce. They got to be people that can understand conflict resolution. They have to know how to treat women. They have to understand how to understand diversity and be empathetic, and like all these life skills that are going to get you through life, especially as it's so divided right now as a country, right? How can we grow young men and women that can bring things together and not just be, I'm here to play ball and that's it? Because I think what we're realizing with social media is such a blessing for everybody, because it really does give student athletes an opportunity to show their value besides just being a basketball player. And I think that's the story to tell. And I think some coaches are understanding it. And I think there's another group that's not understanding it. And the leadership who hire the coaches are the ones that have to understand that. When I was at the American, Aaron McKee is incredible, because I don't know where Aaron's from. I want to say
I'm from Philadelphia. He's from North Philadelphia. Right? Yep.
From Philly, played at Temple, played for the Sixers, NBA assistant, right? Has money, doesn't need to be coaching. But he's coaching at his alma mater. He loves it. Like, he absolutely loves it. There's such a great story with Penny, Aaron, Jawan, and Patrick, that they're all coaching at their alma maters. None of them need to be doing it. They're all doing it because they love ball and they love the kids, right? So Aaron said to me, when all of these things were happening, this racial awakening is taking forth, white people understanding that it's not as good as you think it is, it's not as equal as you think it is, there's major issues here, and a light was being shown into the room, and everyone could see the dust particles now, right? So there's a light being shown. And Aaron kept saying to me, Nate, we have to talk to the people of power. We have to talk to the power. And that just kept resonating with me. So as I hit on, we have to talk to the people who are hiring these coaches, that they're hiring people who are caring about the student athlete first. And, speaking to the power. Sorry, I really jumped on my soapbox.
No, thank you. You said your wife is from Philadelphia?
Yeah, she's a Malvern girl. She's a suburb girl.
Okay.
She went to Villa Maria.
Yep, I know where it is. Thank you, Nate. Appreciate it.
Next question, Dwayne Simpkins.
Oh,
Nate, how you doing, man? Dwayne Simmons,
Good.
associate head coach of George Mason. Great to
I
see you
know.
again, man. I
Good to see
appreciate you
too,
taking the
man.
time tonight, man. I know you could be doing a thousand different things on a Thursday evening, but we really appreciate this.
This is awesome. Thank you.
So I want to apologize in advance for my. I got my whole family next to me. They're trying to get this PS5 tonight, and we got like 4 different computers going on because nobody could buy it. So everybody's may hear some chatter in the background. But Kyle actually stole a little bit of my thunder, man. The question that I had for you was in your transition to the administrative side. Had you given any thought to it before you being out of a job? And then 2, what were some of the traits and expertise that you had developed through the years that you felt would help you transition into the administration side?
Yeah, that's great question, because I think all coaches are constantly, you're not looking for an out game, but it's nice to know you can bring something else to the table besides coaching, right? Like you can be a coach and an assistant AD or something like that, no matter where you go, because you just can't always be an assistant coach or always be a head coach. Maybe you can, and we're lucky enough. But so when I did not get the job at Brown, and I was just had started at Lake Forest Academy. I had really worked hard to get a job at Loyola twice, once under Larry Farmer and once under the coach who's now at Buffalo. I forget his name. I feel bad. And then Craig, who I knew, didn't hire me. So I was like 0 for 3 in like a 3-year span where I got right to the end. And I just decided at that point, you know what, I'm going to go for this master's in sports administration. And I don't care if it takes me 4 years, 5 years to do it. I'm just going to take it one class at a time and invest in myself. And maybe, like, I just sort of let that Division I dream go, but I invested in myself with that degree. And then I felt at my first year at Oregon State, I finished that master's degree. And I think that was important for me in at least understanding that I might have another opportunity besides coaching. So if you don't have a master's degree, it's not like you're out of luck by any means. But what I learned at Minnesota was, as a Dobo, I got to understand about the budget. When I was at Oregon State, I never once asked to see the budget. What's our recruiting budget? What's our travel budget? I didn't care, right? I just wanted to make sure I got my receipts and everything was in. Like I didn't, that's what I meant. Like I got comfortable there. I wasn't curious enough. So at Minnesota, I'm learning about travel. I'm learning about the charter plane. I'm learning about the budget. I'm meeting with the associate AD to talk about scheduling the arena, working on the game scheduling, calling other schools about scheduling. And then one thing that was really helpful too is if you're working on your schedule, that's a great opportunity to meet administrators at other schools, because not all, like if you can't get a hold of the basketball program, you can always call like the associate AD who's overseeing men's basketball and say, hey, you guys interested in playing George Mason? Just wanted to tried to connect with somebody on the staff. I'm just trying to reach out to you too. Want to make sure I'm covering my bases. And you just sort of get this back and forth going. But that opportunity as a Dobo, I turned into the interview process as my, like, hey, look, I've been off the road for a year. I've been working the budgets. I've been dealing with ADs. I'm ready for this change. I'm ready to go into this administrative life. But one thing I had to do 2 things. I had to prove to the people hiring me that I wasn't going to go be the assistant at Penn State when that opened up, right? That I was going to stay, that I was committed to this new career change. And then I also had to check with my wife and my family to be like, guys, if I take this job, like the dream of being a head coach is probably over. The $1 million contract is probably done. And my wife looked at me like, let's go. Let's go to the American, right? Like, I'd like to see you around. So that was helpful too, Dwayne, just knowing like from that perspective that I had family support in that change. So not everybody might have that. I think I was lucky, but getting outside of your basketball office is the first step, right? Developing relationships with your associate AD who oversees men's basketball. Now that can be a rocky relationship sometimes because your head coach might be mad at him. You might be working on something, but you being that buffer, I think, is always really good. So I found a lot of value in that I thought transcended the American and now this job at the NABC, because we're still talking to commissioners, we're still talking to ADs, we're still talking to to head coaches, and I thought that was helpful.
Appreciate that, Nate.
The next question, Sean.
Hi, Nate. My name is Sean Clores. I coach at Sarah Lawrence College in New York. I was curious about the time from your first experience being a head coach and all of the experiences that you've had since Minnesota, Oregon State, administrative experiences. If you took over a college program tomorrow, what are some things that you would do differently from your first experience as a head coach when you were younger?
Wow. Great question. Keep in mind, I was 23 years old when I thought I was the greatest head coach in the world too, by the way. So it definitely you want, well, okay. Decide who you are as a coach, like who you are, how you kind of operate, and just sort of stay within yourself. Hire, I mean, it's a really tough question because I could get on like how to hire a staff and what have you. But I think getting a well-rounded team that you can find some real roles. I think that's, I found a lot of success in that. When I had, okay, here's a couple, especially when I was at the NAIA level, like give me three guys that could probably do a lot, and then give me like 6 guys that can do a little bit of this, and this, and roles were achieved and things ran pretty good. Like, I like that. If I was a head coach, I would be looking for a veteran assistant, and who I really wouldn't want to recruit very much, who could just help me sort of navigate my office, my day-to-day, be a sounding board. And then I'd really love to get like 2 guys that can get out and hustle and recruit and get it and go. I think the future in coaching is women assistant coaches and mental health assistant coaches. I think instead of having a video coordinator and a assistant director of basketball operations and 3 grad assistants, I think you may see some people picking up a mental health assistant coach, a mental wellness, a wellness coach. We have strength coaches. Why can't we have wellness coaches for our whole staff? Right? I think those are coming. Like, I think you're going to see it in the NBA. We're already seeing women assistant coaches in the NBA. I know Tavares and the coach at Maine have hired a women's assistant coach. I just think that goes along with where we're headed, right? Like the diversity, like where we're going, and the fact that people are much more open about their mental health issues. I think you're going to find some value in that on a staff. So you're the first big group I've said that to, but I've said it to a couple people privately and Craig privately, but I think that's where this is going, maybe in 5 years.
Thank you.
Next question, David Bentley.
Nate, thanks for doing this tonight. Obviously, you spoke about, you came from the high school level and went straight to high major. For your advice for younger guys looking to move up, obviously I hear different opinions of, man, don't do whatever you can to not ride a player. But then you hear, if you can attach yourself to a player and that gets you up there, do it. What would you kind of advise, having done, I mean, obviously you made a big jump, but someone looking to make that jump?
Be you, be truthful, and be authentic. So Craig, so I'm at Lake Forest Academy. We have a big kid named Kyle Rowley. He ended up going to Northwestern, but Kyle was there. I was one of his mentors. I'm at Lake Forest Academy. Craig and I are talking. Craig's at Oregon State. This is during our first phone call. And he go, this is after, I think he's actually even hired me. He goes, "Hey, can you get Kyle Rowley?" Like, and at that point, I'm wondering, like, okay, he must think like that, like, now I got to bring Kyle. And I just said to him, "I don't think you want Kyle. Like, I don't think that's the way to do it." Now, I do think having great recruiting connections, right? Like, I was in coaching AAU basketball, allowed me to have relationships with Mean Streets, with Mac Irvin Fire, with the Illinois Wolves, with the Chicago Demons. If you're way back, and Dwayne might know those guys. Like, you learn to have relationships with all those people, to the point where if Craig calls, one of those guys and says, "Hey, what do you think of Nate?" They can be like, "Oh yeah, we know Nate, no question," right? Versus putting all your eggs in one basket, that's a hard route to go. Now, plenty of guys have done it. I just think it's about your network. I think if a coach is hiring you for one person only, I think that's a risk for you. I think if you have a broad network of recruiting, and it's like, he didn't hire me at Brown probably because I wasn't ready. I hadn't grown my network to the point where I could help him. But by the time he got to Oregon State 2 years later, I had built something up that was, I hadn't met Kamani yet when I didn't get the Brown job, right? So, like, all those new heights and all those relationships were cultivated later. So yes, recruiting is extremely important, but you can be valued in that market or in that space without just saying, JoJo's my guy, right? And getting up. Because I think there's so much risk in that. JoJo, if he gets injured, if he flunks a test, it's on you. Like, it's a misery. I think that's hard. I'll just say that. I think it's hard. I'm not going to tell you not to do it. I just think it's hard.
Thank you.
Next question, Darrell Robinson.
Hey, how you doing, Nate?
Good.
Darrell Robinson, Danville High School, Danville, Illinois.
Yes. Okay.
I know. You just you mentioned a lot, man. I'm sitting here just having flashbacks. I remember the full package teams with Amon. I had coached like Team Illinois at the time. I had the Dunson brothers, Dodie and Brandon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Larry Butler's still my.
I'm about to say LB too. Yeah, I'm about to say, yeah, man. You naming all them, I'm like, man, he done forgot about LB.
No,
but,
he's
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, but just with all that, man, just sitting there thinking. I remember the big Garcia kid y'all had too, a full package.
Oh yeah.
And then
Went
even
to
I
Memphis.
remember. Then I actually my playing days, I came to a pro workout there, and actually got offered a couple of spots like over in Ireland and then Germany, but I went back over in England where I had played at. But I remember all that, man.
Did you do the full package, like the pro showcase that we did?
Yeah.
Wow, that's total flashback. I knew I recognized. I apologize. It's funny.
All good. It's all good. Yeah, but I was gonna ask though, since this is about trophies, living trophies, what do you want your players, like if somebody asks you about one of your former players, what would you want them to say about you? What do you think they'll say about you? What would you want them to say about you?
Wow, that's tough. Fair. Nate was fair, pushed me to be better, like helped me be better. And, reflecting back, like, you don't want to be friends with your players, but like, he's my guy. Like, I know if I called Coach Pomeday, he's calling me back. We're having a conversation. We're having life lessons still. Like so Brian Gregory's at South Florida, right? And the tournament gets shut down, right? It's back March 12th, 2020. And the COVID hits, and we decide to stop our tournament. Coach Gregory is walking from the bus in the arena to his locker room, and I'm there to meet him, and I'm crushed that we can't play. And I just put my arm around him. He puts his arm around me, and I'm just saying, Coach, man, I'm sorry, we're canceling the tournament. And he looked at me, he goes, Nate, proud of you. I'm thankful. You know, you're doing the right thing. I know this is difficult. And I looked at him, I go, you know, you're always my coach, right? You're always I'm 44 years old, putting my arm around a guy who's 50, and I'm telling him he's always my coach. And I'm his commissioner, right? And that's the moment I want with one of my players, right? That's the moment I want. And, you know, it's a special thing. And to Brian's credit, he never treated me like I was his player when he was a coach at South Florida, and I was like, he was always really respectful. So I think that's what I would want. That's a great question.
Gotcha. Appreciate it.
And by the way, you can't always, every player you coach is not going to think that of you.
Right.
Impossible. Right. But if you make a couple of those connections, it's valuable than none. And that's the important part. You can't win them all.
Next question, Stefan.
How you doing? I'm Stefan Wozlewski. I'm with the University of Rhode Island women's basketball team as a graduate assistant. I just had a question on being a mentor. So I have a mentor on the team, one of my coaches. He taken me under his wing and just teaching me a lot of stuff. What are some good things to ask my mentor to help me develop as a coach? I know I'm always telling him I'm always available. Whatever he needs me to do, I'm there. I'm that guy. But is there anything else that you would say would be a good thing to ask him?
Yeah, I think mentors are the best for telling you what you're not good at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what am I bad at? What do I need to improve?
And he's taken me aside and he's helped me with that stuff too, and to push me and make me even better. Like, I progressed so much just because of him. It's insane.
Yeah, maybe it's not even like what am I bad at, but like, hey, where's another place I can succeed? Where's another strength? Where's another? I don't know. It's just having, you know, it's who you surround yourself with. I think that's half your battle, man.
Of course. Thank you.
Next question. And we have 2 questions left for you, Nate. Next question is Kenneth.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for your time. I mean, I was just about to ask about mentorship, but I'm going to flip it a little bit. And it seems like that's definitely like a common theme throughout your personal journey. And now in a position yourself, it seems like you're in a position to be able to mentor people. What has that perspective now taught you, whether it's about yourself, somebody else, or just general life?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So as we get older, you're right, like we become the mentors. And I also think the hardest part of mentoring is telling somebody what they're not good at. I think that's also the hardest part too. But real mentors try and guide you, I think, to find opportunities where you can succeed, right? Seek growth opportunities. I think that's so I oversee an office now, which is kind of a new thing for me. Like, I'm managing people. When you're an associate commissioner, you have coaches, but I'm not really managing those coaches. I'm sort of managing the schedule and officiating and I'm managing operations. Now I'm managing an office with 10 other people. It doesn't sound like a lot, but I'm back to sort of coaching again, but it's adults. It's not 18 to 22-year-olds. So trying to we have some young guys that want to grow, and some young women that want to grow, and I'm in a position now where I'm trying to find new things for them to do to succeed and fail at, and maybe kind of fight through, but be there for them if they fall, be there for them if they screw something up, and definitely protect them if they've done something wrong, right? Like, I think as leaders and mentors, we have to give people the opportunity to fail in a safe space without thinking they're going to get fired. I think that's important. And there's a book called Leaders Eat Last. I really like that book.
That's a great book, Simon Sinek.
Yes, Simon Sinek. I really like that book, and you know, it gets into biology too. Like, it gets into a whole lot of stuff. But I got out of it: protect your people. Give them a space where they can grow, learn, make mistakes without fearing the failure. With also taking pride and trying to be great. So I think that's the role of the mentor. But that's a good question. Connecticut College.
No, I appreciate it. That's interesting. I studied behavioral economics, so there's a lot of stuff out there on how mentorship actually can help the mentor as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate your answer.
Hey, I think my friend Jeff is he's like the outdoor. I have a friend who's in a leadership position at Connecticut College. His name's Jeff. Starts with a G.
Jeff Norbert, Dean Norbert.
Yes, Jeff Norbert. I couldn't forget. I was going to yell to my wife, "What's Jeff's last name?"
That's he helped run like student government, so I worked with him a lot, being a part of Student Government Association. He's one of the best.
Yeah, no, he's great. See, you're not at a small college if people don't know anybody. Come on now.
We're all coaches, right, Nate? You know,
our world is small, man. The college world is small, and the high school world, the basketball world is small. Durrell, right? It's small.
It's not about the title or the position. It's not about titles or the position. Next question, BT.
Nate, really enjoyed listening to you and want to really thank you for sharing. I had a question for you. You know, where I'm at, I'm actually coaching in the G League now. I coached in college for a while, worked, chasing different opportunities, move around throughout the Midwest. And, so there's some parallels that just listening to you talk about your experience. And so I was wondering, in discerning, what opportunities to pursue, and particularly like this transition that you've made most recently, what your thought process was. How were you making decisions on your path, to where you've gotten to?
So the process of going from Minnesota to the American had everything to do with exploring a new career path that still kept me in the game of basketball. I really hadn't thought of it. And I think it kind of goes a little bit towards Dwayne's question also, like, how do you really sort of expand out of that coaching piece into these other career pieces? And it's kind of like you got to find some tools to blend together to get that next opportunity. And to know sometimes that I think what's becoming more valued in the world beyond basketball is a broad range of experience, a little more than a narrow focus on stuff. And I think as coaches, we can all relate to that, because you got to do so many things on a coaching staff. You just got to expand it a little bit outside of that locker room and office to a little bit to the athletic department or the organization with that you're in, and just growing some of those relationships. I was also okay with getting out of college basketball. Like I was at peace with, I coached in the Pac-12, beat UCLA. Like I coached at Minnesota in the Big Ten, beat Michigan State. Like I was pleased with where that went, because I also learned some realities that, boy, sometimes your dream job isn't all that it was you had hoped it was going to be, you know. So I was invigorated by doing a job that I didn't know a lot about. I didn't know much going into the American. So now I had to dive in. I had to learn brand new stuff. So I was going into year number 5 at the American, and I really wasn't looking for another job. I mean, I moved to Dallas, Texas in July because we moved to Irving. The offices did, from Rhode Island. And then Craig started to call and we started to talk, and I started asking him a couple questions. He started asking me a couple questions, and it sort of grew into that. But what made me want to go to the NABC was this, I'm going to use that word again, was to expand my range. I'm at the American and I'm working with those coaches and those ADs and a couple of the other leagues. But now if I'm at the NABC, I can help, or at least work with, a whole broad range of coaches. And what initiatives can we start doing that can sort of help everybody move forward? And it's like you gotta dust off the table at the NABC. It's been run for 25 years in one way. And now I think Craig's looking at, like, we got so much work we have to do in front of us. I'm still learning stuff. I'm in week number 4 and I'm still figuring out who's on what committees, and I'm just drinking out of the fire hose. So I'm in a very uncomfortable state right now. And I like it, but it's been interesting. So the opportunity to broaden my range is what intrigued me to this. And I was also at the American. It was the first time I didn't have another goal. Like when you're an assistant coach, it's, oh, I'm going to be a head coach, right? Like that's the goal. Well, at the American, it's like, hey, Nate, what's your goal? Like, man, it felt good actually saying, I have no idea. But I'm going to be in this space right now. I'm going to do everything I can to get the coaches to trust me and to work my ass off. And that was it. And then the NABC opportunity happened. So it's like my dad said when I was young, like, you work hard, you get lucky. Sometimes the opportunities just sort of come as you go. Like, I didn't get Brown, I didn't get Loyola, so I just dug in, and then all of a sudden Oregon State happened. Like, you just stay persistent with that. But yeah, an opportunity to grow my range.
No, it's interesting because, I think particularly, and you can relate to this with you have such tunnel vision, as an assistant, as far as, trying to make an impact, trying to recruit, trying to move up, in the business, and then obviously the pressure to do all that. And so, it's like, if, I'm recently engaged, if my fiance asked me, what would you do if you weren't? Because if you weren't coaching, what would you do? And it's like, it's amazing, but we get so caught up. We get so busy in the pursuit that you don't even necessarily have a good answer. I mean, it's a fairly simple question that I was like, wow, I don't even have the answer to that. Yeah. So I was interested to know how you made that transition. And I think I'm excited for you in that new role, because I think coaches need, in particular, college coaches need advocates, really strong, good advocates now. It's because it's a hard, that culture is tough right now.
I agree. So two things to your last point helped me. Going back to school in some sort of a form helped me. That did. Like, I learned, I just it just gets that part of your brain going again. That helped me. The other piece that, just a random note here, is there's a magazine. It's called the Sports Business Journal. I don't know if you know about it or not. Try and subscribe to it. It can be kind of pricey. There's an online version, the Sports Business Journal. is all about sports. It's about sponsorships. It's about marketing. It's about events. It's got everything in there. It's about the NFL, the NBA, and it's everything about sports except coaching. And I found that resource to be extremely valuable for me as a way to realize there's so much else out there in the sports world beyond coaching that would still keep you in a real competitive spirit, right? Because you lose that competitive. When I'm not putting a scouting report together to beat so-and-so down the street, you lose that juice. And I lost a little bit of that, and you learn to put it in some other ways. But that the Sports Business Journal was really good. And then there's another thing called the D1 Ticker, is another thing that just gives you information about college athletics, about what's going on, more from an administrator's perspective than a coach's perspective. So I would subscribe to the Sports Business Journal and to D1 Ticker. And I think there's like a D2 Ticker also. Those are two resources that everyone who was out of a job in basketball, and they were calling me and they're like, Nate, I think I want to get into something else. What are you looking at? What are you doing? Like, there's great jobs in fundraising that's just as competitive, and you're around the game of basketball and you're there, but it's in an athletic department and you're dealing with it that way. You're still going on road trips, you're still doing stuff, but you're not living on the day-to-day win-loss record. You might be living on the day-to-day who's going to write a check or not, but it's still it's another avenue for you.
Thanks, Nate.
All right. Sean, I'm assuming Scott Daugherty. Next question. Daughtry.
Hey, Mr. Pomeday. Thank you for talking with us tonight. My name's Scott Daughtry. I'm a freshman at University of Tennessee. Going back to mentors, you've obviously had a lot of good mentors. I have a couple of good ones right now that have been pouring into me. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the best way to give back to a mentor? Not just if you go off and become any kind of successful, but just even in the time that you have them, just to thank them for pouring into you for no reason at all.
Man, good question. You know what so Duke, there's a scout for the Chicago Bulls. His name's Duke Dukin. I don't know if you guys remember Duye Dukin. He played at Wisconsin. His dad is the scout at the Bulls. So his dad and I were close. He helped me kind of get ready for Oregon State. And every time I was back in Chicago, I just texted him and said, hey, do you want to get coffee? Coffee's on me. Or coffee's on the Oregon State Beavers, whatever. And just a little let me take you, let me have coffee, let me share with you, let me do something like that. I mean, I think I just knowing that they're appreciated and staying connected. Now, my mentor now is older, right? Steve Pratt's older. He's at a total different point in his life. And the roles have switched. It's on me to be calling him. And we're just at that point now where it's flipped, where I want to be the one checking in on him and making sure he's doing okay and going that way and be like, okay, Steve, who do we need to help now? What do we need to do? So you're young, Scott. Don't just find a place to take him out for pancakes or something like that. That's all. Just knowing that you keep a connection, that's the reward.
Thank you so much.
Last question of the night goes back to Kyle Adams.
Awesome.
Nate, in listening to you, wait a minute. Nate, in listening to you, you strike me as someone that's very intentional. You're very people-centered. You care about people. And as an administrator, sometimes, you have to operate in the big picture. We just saw that the Ivy League decided to cancel winter sports.
Yeah.
As an administrator, and with, there not being a lot of information about what's going on with COVID, kind of how do you reconcile, what are your thoughts on playing this year? And where different schools have different protocols,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's no national protocol. There's no conference-wide protocol. Different schools have different protocols. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So at the American, we had to sort of go through this, and the morning we were getting ready to cancel, the day before, the NCAA said no fans in the stands for our tournament. So that sent all of us, and I'm on a text string with the ACC, the SEC, the Big Ten. Like we're sharing information with each other, so one of us doesn't do something that the other doesn't know about, right? We're all kind of in line, and and I think everybody remembers that night. At least I do. Like you had the NCAA goes no fans, so then all the tournaments are saying, okay, we're not having fans either. And now I'm trying to figure out how I got to get Greg Marshall's 25 family members into the game, and then we're trying to work on all that sort of. That's probably a bad name to bring up right now, but I'm dealing with all this stuff, right? That was just the first name that popped into my head. I apologize. But so we got that all settled, and it's 11 o'clock at night, and I'm calling up Dan Leibovitz at the end of the night and seeing how he's doing. And right then, or maybe it was an hour earlier, Rudy Gobert tests positive, and the NBA shuts down. And I'm like, and I probably yelled the F word over the phone to Dan, and I'm like, oh man, here we go. And then Dan and I spent the next hour saying, what are we doing now? Like, why are we playing? Are we really going to wake up tomorrow morning and play? The NBA just shut down. We don't know what we're dealing with. So it's heartbreaking to be right back in that same scenario, to have the Ivy League, the smartest, I think everybody will agree, probably the smartest people in the world are saying, we probably shouldn't play. And if everybody remembers before, the Ivy League was the first league to say, we're not having our conference tournament. And we were all like, what? No, you jumped the gun. And I was one of them. And that's stupid me. I'm a Northwestern grad. I should have known. These guys know what they're doing. And we kind of blew them off. We're doing it again. We're doing it again. Now, the issue is, Kevin can understand, Dwayne can understand. So what a lot of people don't understand is the amount of money that gets distributed to the Division I schools out of the NCAA tournament due to CBS and Turner television contract that literally helps fund all these other sports at some of these schools and coaches' contracts and everything. That if we go again without an NCAA tournament and without the $1 billion from CBS, I know this sounds really bad, it could be somewhat catastrophic financially, which might be okay. Like it might reset itself, and we're still going to have Division I basketball. We're still going to have coaches. We're still going to have full-time salaries. You know, where that all lands, I don't know. But I think you have two mindsets in this. And I have I'm a Democrat. I know I shouldn't be talking. I'm a Democrat, but I have another side of the family that thinks differently than I do. Not in my personal family, but in my extended family. And they see a bit more value in putting lives at risk from another perspective. Whereas I think right now we're learning how to play sports safely. I just feel like we're probably being a little too cavalier trying to play non-conference games against teams who don't have the same protocols, trying to play in MTEs. I think we're trying to do a little too much at a high level, that we really just want to play our conference games and try and play a season that way, where we're all doing the same testing, the same protocols, it's agreed upon, and we go. I've been telling people who would listen since the summer that I think that's where we should go. But we're going to learn the hard way. I think we're going to kind of stumble along until we just get to the point where we play conference games only, I think is where we may go. Don't take my word for it. I don't know. I just sort of see that's what's happening. But my wife yells at me. She's like, "You're not." We have an MTE at the NABC. It's called the Hall of Fame Classic in Kansas City. I'm supposed to go in 2 weeks. We're having no fans. Northwestern, South Carolina, Tulsa, and TCU's in it. My wife keeps laughing at me. She's like, "You're not having that tournament. Like, you know you're not having that tournament." So I hope we are, but I don't think you'll see seasons eliminated. I think you'll see them shrunk if we make an adjustment. So long-winded answer that I just kind of went all the way around it, but I obviously without national leadership, this is an issue. Maybe in January with new national leadership, it might straighten out a little bit. We'll see.
Thank you, Nate.
See, Lisa's smiling. I'm smiling too.
Nate, as we bring it to a close, you will get the final word with this question. What is your call to action for us here at the Living Trophy Master Zoom class?
Oh, just you're in the right place. I mean, all you guys are sharing and trying to learn, and I wish I had something like this. Like, this is a grad school class. This is a grad school class.
I told you, Orlando. I told you, Orlando.
This is a grad school. When I was in grad school, Jim Phillips was the Northern Illinois AD, and he spoke to us. And I asked a question. I knew he was going to fire his coach. It's like, how do you go about like having to make a coaching change when you think you have to make one? And he gave an answer. Like, you guys are getting really, really amazing people to come on here. Kevin showed me kind of the lineup. So thank you. I just appreciate. I've never talked so much about myself for so long, so I'm really kind of freaked out about that. But thanks for the questions, guys. You guys were incredible. This was better than I thought it was going to be, Kevin. Thank you. I was very anxious, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We want to thank everyone for taking time to come to the Living Trophies Master Zoom class here tonight. I want to thank Odell McCants for always being a moderator, a true friend that understands what I'm trying to accomplish here and what we're trying to accomplish here. But more importantly, I want to thank you, Nate Pomeday, for coming on here, for sharing your time, sharing your knowledge, and speaking truth. You were transparent and you were authentic. And when we talked about coming on, you asked me about the tribe. And I told you that they kind of reflect my vibe, and I'm really proud of what we're trying to do here. And when you came here tonight, you were authentic, you were genuine, and you shared your knowledge and your time. So we want to thank you for coming. All of the Zooms are put up over the weekend. They'll be on Kevin Sutton on YouTube, the Living Trophies Master Zoom class site. Go on there. You can see all of the former presenters. And then please subscribe so we can, keep this thing rolling. So we always leave with a quote, Nate, and we always leave with a call to action. And our quote for the week is to dig deep within yourself, for there is a fountain of goodness ever ready to flow if you keep digging. So keep digging is the word for this week. And our call to action comes from none other than our mentor, George Raveling, Nate, and it says, each of us are on a personal self-discovery journey to find something in life that emotionally connects and inspires us to who we are. While knowledge can be lost along the way, wisdom, truth-telling are timeless. Do not become a prisoner of other people's expectations, thinking just because other people cannot comprehend your aspirational vision. Each day, our truth, dreams must be lived. Let's celebrate where we are today while listening to our intuition and inner voice. And that comes from George Raveling. So I want to thank everybody for coming again tonight. And I want to thank you, Nate, and wish you the best of luck in your new position. at the NABC, because I truly believe that you and Craig are going to do great things and going to really help this business, that involves around the sport of basketball. I really do believe that you guys are going to do some things for coaches that are going to be really impactful and help grow this profession, even in a more positive way. So I do want to thank you for coming on, Nate, and for being a valued friend and a trusted friend. And everybody else, man, just continue to be that ladle that pours into the people that you serve. And we keep creating those living trophies. So have a blessed week. And, I'll see you next Thursday. This is coming to a close now. So next week, our guest is going to be John Wallace of Georgetown, formerly of Georgetown University, now working for the Denver Nuggets. So thank you so much for your time. Thanks so much for coming. Nate and I'll reach out and touch base with you in the next couple of days. So thanks so much, everybody. All right. Be blessed.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good night.